Namaskar and welcome to StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigaonkar. Let's continue our discussion of NCERT Science series. We are discussing NCERT Science textbook of class 10, where we are carrying out a discussion of individual chapters. The agenda for today's discussion is chapter 7, that is control and coordination. Before this, in our previous lectures from chapter 1 to chapter 5, we discussed the ideas which are connected to your chemistry. In our latest discussion, we understood life processes from chapter 6, where we discussed the digestive system, the respiratory system, circulatory system, and other life processes, both for human beings, some organisms, and for plants as well. Today, we'll move ahead and discuss control and coordination. That means by now you must have already guessed that discussion is connected to the nervous system. You already know that I am speaking, I'm talking, I'm trying to teach, I'm making some hand gestures. That means I have some sort of a movement. For that, I need control and coordination, which is controlled by the human nervous system. We are going to understand that in today's interaction. Let us begin. As I told you, in our previous interactions, we discussed about life process. For metabolism, we need different life process, like the digestion. For instance, as I told you, right now, I am using some gestures and I'm teaching, I'm creating sound. For that, energy is needed. That means I need to have food. I had food, that food was digested, it was absorbed, assimilated, and using that energy, I am able to perform certain activities which are based on motion, which are based on coordination. That is what is the agenda of our today's discussion. Now, the first question is, sir, do all organisms move? Yes, to a large extent. If it is a living organism composed of a living cell, they have some sort of movement, some sort of coordinated movement, and some sort of control movements for sure. Now you must be thinking, sir, with me I understand, with humans I understand, because we move, we walk, we run. I am right now making gestures. With other organisms also, yeah, I can understand that amoeba, if it wants to move, it changes its shape. All right. But sir, what about plants? Do they move? See, plants are relatively stationary. Once they grow, they are relatively stationary. But plant during their growth phase, they have movement, isn't it? They have growth movement. We have discussed about different tissues, the apical tissues, the meristem tissues. They grow, right? For example, if I take a simple seed, I put it in the soil, I water it, it starts germinating. Now, once it starts germinating, what is it doing? It is moving, it is displacing the soil. It has displaced the topsoil. Then it germinates. Then it becomes a seedling, then a sapling, then a herb, shrub, and tree. Even during its growth phase or the maturation phase, it has some sort of a movement depending on the input. We'll talk about that in this interaction. That means, sir, why do these organisms have control and coordination in them? The answer to it is to look at, or control or coordination, to look after its interaction with the environment, with its surroundings. For instance, humans. Now we have some sort of control system. Say if I go at a place where there is very low temperature, what do? I need something to cover myself. Why? Because it's extremely low temperature. For an animal, there is a need of control and coordination. For instance, for some, it is to look after their surroundings, and for some, it is for their living itself. For example, let's talk about the prey and the predator model. For a predator, it needs movement, control, and coordination to catch the prey. And for the prey, it has to survive. Take example of cat and mouse. A cat has to run to catch the mouse. A mouse has to run to live. So it's not just about its own surroundings, of course, interaction with their surroundings and environment, but many a times control and coordination, it becomes very important for living itself. All right. So control and coordination systems are present in organisms because of these reasons. In order to live, in order to protect themselves, in order to interact with their surroundings and environment. Now the next question. So what is going to be our focus in this discussion? Our focus is going to be the human nervous system. First, we'll talk about humans, and then we'll talk about animals. Pardon me. Then we'll talk about plants as well. When I say humans and animals, again, they have nervous system. With respect to plants, they do not have a well-developed nervous system, but they have some sort of control and coordination mechanism. We'll understand that. First, human nervous system. This is the controlling mechanism for our coordination. The human nervous system, it consists of a neural setup. a neural setup which helps in coordination. As I told you, right now I am making these gestures. For example, we have reflex action also in us. Means if I go closer to say a flame, I have some sort of an action that I don't want to go near that. It might harm me. Now, for all these actions, we have the nervous system, and nervous system, it comprises of two parts: the central nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system. So our entire control and coordination mechanism is handled by the nervous system. The central nervous system, it consists of the brain, and it consists of the spinal cord. So please remember, brain and the spinal cord, they comprise your central nervous system. This is like the controlling mechanism. All the messages, all the information, it is relayed through this central nervous system, and ultimately from here it is connected to the peripheral nervous system. And please remember, our entire nervous system, it is a combination of the basic cell, that is a neuron. What is brain? Brain is basically a ganglion, or an amalgamation of billions of neurons. In fact, it is said that in human brain there are billions of neurons, 100 billion, right? In fact, they say that it is ever increasing, the number is ever increasing, because more and more intelligence we gather, number of neurons and the neural connections, they all increase. When we talk about brain and then the spinal cord, it is nothing but an interconnection of these neurons. Similarly, with respect to peripheral nervous system, it is an amalgamation, or it comprises basically of different ganglions and different nerves. You must have heard about the nerves. Like, I have a sciatic nerve somewhere here, I have a ulnar nerve here. You must have seen during our school days, we used to have this prank, right? You simply hit a person here, then they feel some sort of a current. Why? Because there is a nerve there, the ulnar nerve. So nerves are a part of peripheral system. We'll understand what is the job of these in some time. But this entire human nervous system, the control and coordination mechanism, it comprises of the basic fundamental unit called a neuron. Now, very similar to how we discussed about the other life processes, in kidneys we have nephrons, in lungs we have alveoli, millions of alveoli. In kidney we have millions of nephrons. Similarly, in a nervous system, it is comprised of a fundamental unit called neuron. A neuron has an elongated structure like this. Of course, it will have a cell body, that means it will have center, that is a nucleus. Now, along with it, it has different parts. It has dendrites. Now, you can see these dendrites are finger-like projections. And from here, the information has to be relayed to the axon. This is the axon. And at the end, there are axon terminals. Means the information is going to be relayed in this particular direction. Apart from that, there are other parts like the myelin sheath, the cell membrane, the axon hillock, etc. But from the broader perspective, from UPSC examination perspective, I would say that you need to understand that the dendrites receive the impulses, they transmit the impulses through the cell, through the axon, which reaches to axon terminal, and these axon terminal ultimately help us in control and coordination. All right, how does this work? How does this work? I want to understand what exactly happens. As I told you, a simple neuron is this, and if you see the complex neural structure, at the end the axon terminals are connected with your, say, muscle fibers. Now what happens? Right now I have to move this pen from one place, from here to here. That means my muscles have to work. For the coordination or for this movement, my muscle has to act, my muscle has to work. But a message has to go to this muscle that you have to move this from here to here. That's your job right now. All right. So what happens? The nerves or the neuron, it receives this information at the dendritic tip. At the dendritic tip, my brain has just now sent a signal that you have to move this pen from here to here. And please remember that the signal passes, or signal transfer, it happens in this format. That means chemical to electrical, and electrical to chemical transformation happens. That means as soon as the message comes, there is some sort of a chemical reaction near this dendrite. This chemical reaction, it changes that signal into an electrical impulse, and that electrical impulse, it passes through the axon body, reaches the nerve endings or the axon terminal, and this axon terminal, it is going to send a message. Rahul, please move your muscle so that the pen goes from here to here. All right. So nerves, they also have different sensory parts. Now, when we talk about our nerves, we have some sort of a reflex motion. This is the motion which I told you. It is a controlled motion. That means through my consciousness, I told that to teach in a better way, to explain in a better way, I told you that I have to move this pen from here to here. It's a controlled motion. But many a times what we have is a reflex action. Now this reflex action, it is a combination of different kind of nerves. You must have seen that if I go near the flame, I try to move away. That's a reflex action. If there is a strong wind gushing right towards my face, I close my eyes. I want to safeguard my sensory organs. Those are eyes. If something pinches, example, if I touch a thorn, then I feel pain and I suddenly take my hand back. If I touch a hot utensil, I take my hand back. That's the reflex action. Now, how is this reflex action controlled? Now we need to understand how exactly this works. As I told you, our entire body is composed of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, it is mainly connected with your nerves, which ultimately send the signal to your motor neurons. Now, when we talk about our nerves or neurons, there are three kinds. One is a sensory nerve. We sense it. In our body, there are approximately 20 or more than 20 sensory receptors. For instance, I have gustatory receptors here. In my tongue, I have gustatory receptors. I can sense if something is spicy, if something is bitter, if something is salty, based on these gustatory receptors. I also have cutaneous receptors on my skin, meaning if something touches my skin, I sense, okay, something is touching. If something is pinching, I sense that because I have cutaneous senses. I have photosensors in my eyes. If there is too much of light, then I close my eyes. I have other for instance, I have ear based senses. I also have olfactory senses, meaning in my nose I can sense the smell. These are sensory nerves or sensory neurons which help by sending signals to your central nervous system, to your brain and spinal cord. Meaning, if I sense something, that information first of all goes to your brain, if it is a good thing or a bad thing. Apart from that, we also have motor nerves or motor neurons. Now, these motor neurons, they help you in your coordination. There is another kind of neuron or nerves in our body which is called as interneuron, or a mixed kind of neuron. It can be a mixture of motor and sensory both. Now, because of these neurons or because of these nerves, I'll be using these terms interchangeably. Because of these neurons, I have a reflex action. Now, what is this reflex action? I'll give you an example, right? I am going to touch a flame, a hot flame. See, as soon as I go near to that flame, what happens? Here, my cutaneous sensor or my skin, it feels that warmth or it feels that heat, and it sends a signal to my central nervous system, which consists of the spinal cord and the brain. So sensory nerve sends the information to brain that there is some sort of a danger, and brain immediately sends a signal back to your motor neurons that do not go near there. Just take your hand back. That's your reflex action. Why it happens? It's because of this reflex arc. Let's try to understand this, right? As I told you, we have our brain and we have a spinal cord, which are a part of central nervous system, and this forms, or it's a part of the arc itself, the reflex arc. That means I get a message sent from brain through the spinal cord, and this motor neuron is activated. I just go here and it says, oh, this is very hot, I shouldn't touch this pan because its temperature is very high. That's how our coordination and control mechanism works. All right. So there is some sort of a chemical reaction or chemical change which leads to creation of electrical impulse. That electrical impulse eventually transforms again into a chemical signal so that your muscles work. So it's a transformation between chemical and electrical stuff. All right. Right. Now, when we look at the central nervous system, the main part in our central nervous system is our brain. Brain is here right inside the head. Now, brain, it is composed of billions of neurons. There is a neural connection of billions of neurons leading to formation of different parts of our brain. Broadly, we can classify the brain on the basis or on the basis of matter that we have, we divide it into forebrain, that is the frontal brain. It's here, forebrain. It basically comprises of 80 to 90% of your brain. Then we have a midbrain. It connects your forebrain with your hindbrain. Now hindbrain, it controls body's functions. It is somewhere here. So we can say this is your forebrain, midbrain is somewhere in the middle, and your hindbrain is here. Now in this we have different parts. Now from exam perspective, we need to remember the functions of these. Basically, in the forebrain, the important part is cerebrum. Cerebrum is this huge part. All right. Now if you see human brain is somewhere around 3 pounds approximately, right? Out of that, the maximum weight is of cerebrum itself. The cerebrum, it comprises of gray matter and white matter. And gray matter comprises of nerves or neurons, and that gray matter, it helps us in our learning, in our reasoning, in our thinking. So 80% of our brain is the cerebrum, and it is the important part of our brain which is responsible for regulating our emotions, our reasoning, our learning, and other senses as well. In the forebrain, just below the forebrain, at the connection, I would say at near the midbrain, we have thalamus. Now thalamus is called as switchboard of our brain. Thalamus here. Thalamus is called the switchboard of the brain. Thalamus is responsible for all the sensory functions that we have, like the sight, sound, touch, etc. It helps us in sensing. Below the thalamus there is hypothalamus. Now hypothalamus, it is a very important gland in the head which helps to secrete hormones which control the body temperature, heart rate, hunger, mood, etc. Apart from that, in our hindbrain we have two important parts. There are three. There is pons, there is cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. Cerebellum and medulla, these two are very important for movement. Since we are talking about control and coordination, I can say that cerebrum, thalamus, and hypothalamus, they are mainly responsible for control, and for coordination, cerebellum and medulla oblongata. Now cerebellum, it controls the voluntary muscles. For example, right now I'm speaking, I'm making certain gestures, I'm moving my feet, my hand. That is because of cerebellum. Why? Because it is responsible for your coordination, posture, balance, and motor skills. But there are some other movements which I cannot control, and medulla oblongata, it controls those. For instance, my heart, it is beating, I cannot control it. The internal muscles, the soft muscles that we have, I cannot control it. I cannot control some involuntary muscles or some automatic processes, and those are controlled by medulla oblongata. Mainly the cardiovascular and the respiratory system that we have, it is controlled. The breathing, the blood pressure, etc. All this is maintained by the medulla oblongata. So now we have understood the control and coordination is because of brain, and brain is connected to the spinal cord. This is the central nervous system. So that means brain has to be protected at all the costs, right? So we have some sort of a mechanism of protection of our brain. As I told you, our brain is located here, right, the head. So this has to be protected. For the physical protection, we have cranium. Cranium are these bones. Cranial bones, or the cranium, it is connected to your facial bones as well. They protect your brain inside. Now inside the cranium there are three layers of muscles or tissues, I can say, which protect the brain. They are called as meninges. Meninges are three layers of membrane that not only protect the brain, they also protect the spinal cord as well. The three layers are dura mater, arachnoid matter, and pia mater. Apart from that, the brain and the spinal cord, it also has cerebrospinal fluid. Now this cerebrospinal fluid, it helps in normal functioning of the brain and the spinal cord. It is basically responsible for, I would say in simple terms, metabolism activities that are connected with your brain. Brain also needs blood, brain also undergoes some sort of metabolic activities. So it helps, it protects your cerebrum, spinal cord, and it also supplements your sensory tissue system as well. All right. So this is about the human control and coordination. Let's now move and talk about the plant systems. Now you must be thinking, sir, plants also have control system. You will get to know in some time. But before that, remember that Study IQ is offering you prelims to interview initiative. It is the comprehensive program for your complete civil services preparation. We'll be hand-holding you through all the stages, prelims, mains, interview, every stage. It has been designed at a very affordable price, and for maximum discount, do use my code Rahul. Remember, our batch is closing out on 31st July, and it is the ideal time to join now, because if you start in July, I can say if you start from August, September, October, November, and December, 5 months for your foundation. Then we'll focus on prelims completely. Once you clear prelims, come to our Gurukul, come to our mains residential program. We'll prepare you for mains and then interview as well. Do it soon. Right. Now let's talk about coordination in plants, coordination control in plants. Now we know that animals and us human beings, we have extensive neural networks and the nervous systems, the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. But plants do not have this. Plants do not have such extensive systems. But plants do have some sort of reactive or some sort of coordination measures for sure. As I gave you example, they have or they respond to some sort of stimulus. Classic example being the mimosa plant or the touch-me-not plant. The touch-me-not plant. If you see this touch-me-not plant, what happens? You just touch this, then it closes suddenly. How does this happen? How does this happen? I told you they do not have any nervous system, but they do have some sort of chemical signaling for sure. Even if it is not a chemical signaling, then in many other plants they have certain other mechanisms which are connected with water or changes in their cell structure. Many a times we see swelling or shrinking so that the plant changes its shape, right? We have seen so many examples responding to the stimulus. Touch-me-not is one of the examples, and the insectivorous plants, insectivorous plants, they also have some sort of a mechanism for reaction. As soon as the insect touches it, it reacts. Many a times the leaves or the cells, they shrink, they swell. So that is also one of the mechanism for their coordination, immediate response to some sort of stimulus. But apart from this, they also have movement which is connected to their growth. Now this is very interesting. Now you must have observed this in our day-to-day life. We have observed so many plants, they climb up, especially if their stem is very weak. If the stem is very weak, or if their fruits are very heavy. For example, pumpkin, right? Pumpkin. So a pumpkin or the bottle gourd, those plants, they cannot grow because their fruits are very heavy. So what do? They grow as creepers, or some others they grow as climbers. How? Because they have a growth mechanism. They want to find the inputs that they want. See, what is the input for a plant? They need water, or they're getting it from the roots. Okay. They also need sunlight. And many times what happens, say if there is an epiphyte which wants to grow, but there is another tree which is hiding sunlight or which is taking all the sunlight, then what does that plant do? That plant, it slowly and steadily, it reaches to the top to get or catch that sunlight. How does it do it? It does it by some sort of modification, bringing tendrils. Those tendrils help them in climbing. Or according to the growth factors, many plants show some sort of coordination or a shift in their growth pattern. That is called as tropism. Right? So tropism in the plants, it is the development that is prompted by a path based on their input, so that their growth continues. It is their improvement that they seek. As I told you, what are the inputs that they need? They need water, they need sunlight, they want to protect themselves. So it can be input factor or environmental factor as well. For example, if there is sunlight, now see, they show some sort of phototropism. Wherever there is sunlight, the plant, it tries to grow in that direction. Now you must have seen this classically with sunflower. You have seen this? You must have seen the sunflower. The flower itself, it turns its head according to the movement of the sun. That is called phototropism. Apart from phototropism, there is also geotropism. Now, geotropism is a classic idea where you need to understand that the shoot, it always tries to grow against the gravity, and the root, it always tries to grow towards the gravity. So if one of your plant structure, it just falls down, so what do you see? You see that the roots will still grow in this direction, but the shoot will start growing in this direction. It's a response to gravity. Apart from that, there is also thigmotropism. Thigmotropism is classically the touch, some sort of stimulus. Thigmotropism is the example of touch me not. I touch it, it closes leaves. Or we also have hydrotropism. Now, hydrotropism is a response to water. Wherever there is water, you will see that the roots, they tend to move in that direction towards the water. They try to seek water. Many a times, they also have some sort of chemotropism. Chemotropism means wherever you find your requisite nutrients or chemicals, you move towards that. Apart from this, the control and coordination mechanism in plants is also controlled by phytohormones or plant hormones. In plant, there are different kind of hormones which help them in growth or which help them to stop the growth. For example, if there is extreme sunlight, if there is too much cold, then the plant, it wants to conserve its energy and not grow. And basically whether this storm or whether this cold temperature or hot temperature, then it again starts to grow when there are favorable conditions. These are governed or these are controlled by the phytohormones. The important phytohormones or the plant hormones are growth promoters and growth inhibitors, that is auxins, cytokinins, gibberellins, ethylene, abscisic acids. Let's talk about these. Auxins, these are basically chemicals that are produced by a plant which help them in growth. Auxins, they help in cell extension and development of the plant. When auxin is released, auxins, please remember, auxin is not a single hormone. Auxins are a set of chemicals. One of the examples can be the indole acidic corrosive or indole butyric corrosive. There are different kind of auxins which help in cell elongation, cell growth. That means the height of the plant, it increases. There are also other phytohormones like gibberellins. Gibberellins are plant chemicals that advance in cell separation, that also help in breaking of the seeds. Seeds, they have to germinate. Seeds have to break the outer coating, and for that gibberellin helps. Example is some of the chemicals produced by Bacillus licheniformis. Okay. Apart from that, cytokinins or cytokinins, right? These are plant chemicals that advances cell division. It also helps in kicking off the stomata, predominantly found in the apical meristem. These are some of the growth promoters, but there are some other growth inhibitors. As I told you, the plant has to weather the tough season, and for that we need some phytohormones which help them in shedding of leaves, which help them in stopping of growth, and these are abscisic acid and ethylene. Now, abscisic acid, it helps in hindering development of the plant and helping the plant to shed their leaves and fruits, etc. are shed. The flowers are shed, the fruits are shed, the leaves are also shed during that tough season. The examples of this are jasmonate, cytokinin, right? Cytokinin is a chemical, all right? Now, apart from that, ethylene. Now, ethylene, I would say it's not exactly a growth inhibitor, but it acts as both. It enhances growth also, it inhibits growth also whenever necessary. Now, ethylene, it acts as both promoter and inhibitor. In trace amount, ethylene helps entire plant in regulating and stimulating the opening of flowers, fruit ripening, and shedding of leaves as well. And remember, that's why ethylene is used in artificial ripening, not from now itself. From ancient times, ethylene is used in ripening of fruits. You must have seen many a times a fruit, it ripens very quickly if you put that in your mandir. You must have a small temple or a small worshipping place at your home, and if you put a banana there and you obviously light a lamp and then also light some sort of incense sticks, right? We call them agarbatti colloquially. So when you light it, you will see that the next day the banana has ripened. It has got certain dots on it. Why? Because from that agarbatti, ethylene gas is also released, which helps in ripening of fruits. A classic example from our common day-to-day life. All right. So plant hormones, they also help in control and coordination. Now, apart from that, we also have hormones in human body which help us not just in control and coordination, but in the development of entire body. In humans, we have two kinds of gland. We have two kinds of gland system. All right. When we talk about different gland system, we have endocrine system. We have the endocrine system. We also have the exocrine system or exocrine glands. Right. The difference between these two is that exocrine gland, they do not release whatever is secreted by these exocrine glands. It is not released. It is not released in bloodstream. It is not released in bloodstream. But the endocrine glands, they release the hormones or they release the chemicals directly into your blood. That's why I told you blood is a connective tissue which carries a lot of things. It carries the impurities, it carries oxygen, carbon dioxide, different chemicals, nutrients. It also carries the hormones which are released by endocrine glands. And in humans, we have different endocrine glands like the pituitary gland, which is called the master gland. We have hypothalamus, we have thyroid gland, which releases the thyroxine hormone. We have parathyroid gland. In males, there are testes. These release sex hormones. In females, there are ovaries which release the sex hormones. Apart from this, there are also other glands like pancreas, which help in regulating the sugar level in the body or the glucose level in the blood. Apart from that, there are adrenal glands which help to trigger the fight or flight response, right? Adrenal glands, it helps in release of adrenaline, or we call it chemically as epinephrine. As epinephrine is released, then you feel that excitement, right? When you go on that roller coaster ride, adrenaline is released. So this is a list of some important hormones that are produced, and hormones are predominantly protein hormones. Hormones can be proteins. Hormone can be some sort of steroidal chemicals like testosterone, right? Progesterone, cortisol. It can also be iodothyronines. You do know that this thyroid gland, it produces thyroxine, and for production of thyroxine, iodine is very important. And if iodine is missing, then thyroxine is not produced, and it leads to certain disabilities or disease. Goiter being predominantly one, where you get this swollen neck. That's why we have fortified salt which contains iodine. And as I told you, there are certain hormones for your reference. Again, pituitary gland, it releases some of the important hormones like vasopressin. It controls your water retention in kidney. It also releases growth hormone responsible for growth. It releases LH and FSH, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. This in turn helps the sex hormone release, or the sex organs release those sex hormones. Apart from that, pituitary releases two important hormones. I want you to remember this: oxytocin and prolactin. Oxytocin, again, colloquially it's also called the love hormone, right? Oxytocin, it stimulates the contraction of uterus and initial milk production in the mammary glands. Later on, milk is produced because of release of prolactin. Apart from this, hypothalamus, it produces certain important hormones like the growth hormone, the thyrotropin hormone, the gonadotropin releasing hormone. Kidneys and pancreas also release important hormones. Please remember, pancreas releases two important hormones. One is glucagon, another one is insulin. Insulin lowers the blood sugar level. Glucagon increases the blood sugar level. These are released by pancreas. Apart from that, the testicles, so the testes in males, they release testosterone. In females, ovaries, they release estrogen and progesterone. Please remember, in males, the testicles are also responsible for some amount of estrogen production. And similarly, in ovaries, in females, the ovaries, they also produce some amount of testosterone. In fact, in females, testosterone is produced in small quantities in ovaries as well as in the adrenal glands. Very important pointer. Please remember this. All right. Right. Now, apart from this, there are some other hormones like thyroid gland. It produces the thyroid hormone or thyroxine, adrenal, epinephrine, and there are some other hormones for your reference here. All right. Right. So this is basically the completion of the chapter control and coordination. But before going or before exiting, before going out, let's look at some of the questions that can be framed. For example, from UPSC perspective, questions like this can be formed. Consider the following statements. You have to find out incorrect statements. First statement is: shoot of the plant shows positive geotropism, root of the plant shows negative geotropism. Did you get the answer? Right? Please try to attempt this. Try. We have to find out incorrect statements, and I would say both are incorrect. Think about it and let me know. All right, I'll be giving these answers in my Telegram channel as well. All right. Apart from this, another question. You have to find out which statements are correct. Auxins are phytohormones that promote growth. Okay. Gibberellins are phytohormones that inhibit growth. I think this is a wrong statement. You can get it right easily. It's an easy question. Apart from that, pituitary gland is responsible for development of sex organs. Hypothalamus is responsible for stimulation of all body organs. Which of these are incorrect? You have to find out. Then you have to discuss, consider the following: neurons, meninges, cranium, and synapses. Now, there's a term synapses which is written here. See, when one neuron, these are dendrites, these are axon terminals. When one neuron is connected to another, it is through something called as synapses. Synapses are the nerve endings or the connection between two neurons. So you have to tell which of the above are responsible for protection of brain. So I think you can find out. This is also a relatively easy question. I'll be giving these answers on my Telegram channel as well, right? And the Telegram channel is with the name @Rahul Sai. Those questions are just for your template so that you understand what kind of queries or what kind of MCQs we can expect in UPSC Civil Service Examination prelims. Right? Thank you for watching this video. And again, if you like this, you can always follow me on this particular ID. Thank you again. Jai Hind.